Hello, listener. The fact you hear this means you're alive. If you're new here, consider subscribing and comment below where you're listening from. Let's begin the story. The drawer was open again. I stood frozen in the morgue hallway, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to illuminate drawer 7C. Pulled out exactly 6 inches, just like the last 2 times. My hand trembled as I fumbled for the laminated card in my pocket, the one maintenance supervisor Gerald had shoved into my hands 3 hours ago with eyes that wouldn't meet mine. Read Rule 4, I whispered to myself, squinting at the smudged text. If a morgue drawer opens by itself more than twice in one shift, do not close it a third time. Call extension 666 immediately and leave the basement level. This was the third time. Something scraped inside the drawer, metal on metal, slow and deliberate. My breath caught. The temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees since I'd entered the basement. I could see my exhalations forming clouds in the beam of my flashlight. The card trembled in my hand as I read Rule 5. Never shine your light directly into an open drawer after midnight. I checked my watch, 12:47 a.m. The scraping stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard something else, a wet, rhythmic sound. Breathing, but not human breathing. This was deeper, with a horrible liquid quality to it, like someone drowning in reverse. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to reach for it. Extension 6666. My fingers hovered over the numbers, but something made me look up at the drawer again. A hand, gray, bloated, with fingernails the color of old newspaper, gripped the edge of the drawer from inside. I ran. My boots pounded against the linoleum as I sprinted toward the stairwell. The laminated card clutched so tight the edges cut into my palm. Behind me, I heard the drawer slide open further with a metallic screech that seemed to stretch on forever. Then came the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. And footsteps. Impossible, wet footsteps following me. I burst through the stairwell door and slammed it behind me, my whole body shaking as I fumbled with my phone. The call connected on the first ring. Extension 6666. A woman's voice said, flat and emotionless. State the violation. Drawer opened 3 times, I gasped. Something came out. Rule 4. Stay on the stairs. Do not re-enter the basement level. Do not go above the 2nd floor. Someone will come for you. The line went dead. I sank onto the stairs, trying to control my breathing. That's when I really looked at the card in my hand for the first time since Gerald had given it to me. Night maintenance protocols, basement level. Rule 1. All basement rounds must be completed between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Rule 2. Carry a flashlight. Never rely on overhead lighting after midnight. Rule 3. If you hear your name called, do not respond. It is not who you think it is. Rule 4. If a morgue drawer opens by itself more than twice in one shift, do not close it a third time. Call extension 6666 immediately and leave the basement level. Rule 5. Never shine your light directly into an open drawer after midnight. Rule 6. This rule was completely smudged out, rendered illegible by what looked like water damage or something else. Rule 7. The elevator to the basement only operates between midnight and 3 a.m. Do not question why. Rule 8. If you survive until 6 a.m., you may leave. Do not discuss what you experienced with day shift staff. I read Rule 8 again, my blood turning cold. If you survive until 6 a.m., not when, if. I checked my watch again, 12:52 a.m. 5 hours and 8 minutes until sunrise. From somewhere below, echoing up through the stairwell, I heard the sound of metal drawers sliding open. Not just one this time. All of them. 3 days ago, I was serving coffee at a diner and drowning in student debt. My mother's medical bills had piled up after her stroke, and the collection agencies were circling like vultures. When I saw the posting for a night maintenance position at Mercy General Hospital, $32 an hour, night differential included, immediate start, I didn't ask questions. I should have. Now, sitting on these stairs with something horrible moving in the darkness below, I understood why the pay was so high. Why Gerald had looked so relieved when I'd accepted the position. Why the day shift maintenance guys had gone silent when I'd walked into the break room that first morning. A door opened somewhere above me. 2nd floor, maybe 3rd. Footsteps descended, slow and measured. Hello. I called out, my voice cracking. Extension 6666 and someone? The footsteps stopped. Then, from directly above me, I heard my own voice call back. Hello? Extension 6666 sent someone. Rule 3. If you hear your name called, do not respond. It is not who you think it is. But that hadn't been my name. It had been my exact words and my exact voice played back like a recording. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. The footsteps resumed, but now they were descending faster. I could hear something else too, a wet, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled along the floor. The basement door handle rattled. I watched in horror as the handle turned slowly, deliberately. The door was locked. I locked it, but the metal was starting to bend under some impossible pressure. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Basement utility closet. 3rd floor. Climb. I didn't hesitate. I ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. Behind me, the basement door finally gave way with a shriek of tortured metal. The thing on the stairs below me wasn't using footsteps anymore. It was climbing the walls. I hit the 3rd floor landing and burst through the door, scanning desperately for a utility closet. There, at the end of the hallway, a door marked maintenance only. I sprinted for it, my lungs burning. Behind me, the stairwell door slammed open with enough force to crack the wall. The closet was unlocked. I threw myself inside and locked the door, pressing my back against it. The small space was crowded with cleaning supplies, mop buckets, and a strange smell, something chemical mixed with old flowers. Something slammed into the door hard enough to knock me forward. Once, twice, then silence. I waited, counting my heartbeats. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. My phone buzzed again. It can't enter the closets. They're consecrated. You broke Rule 4. Now it's awake. I texted back with shaking fingers. Who is this? The response came immediately. The last person who had your job. I'm in closet 4B. 4th floor. We need to talk. But whatever you do, don't break Rule 7. The elevator. The message cut off. I checked my watch, 1:23 a.m. The elevator only operated between midnight and 3 a.m. I had 1 hour and 37 minutes to find closet 4B, and I had to use the elevator to get there. I cracked the closet door open. The hallway was empty, but the fluorescent lights were flickering in a pattern that made my eyes hurt. 3 quick flashes, then darkness, then 3 more. The pattern was deliberate, intentional. The elevator was at the far end of the hall. I could see its doors, stainless steel reflecting the strobe-like lighting. According to the rules, it only operated between midnight and 3 a.m. It was now 1:31 a.m. I stepped into the hallway. The temperature was wrong, not cold like the basement, but warm. Too warm. The air felt thick, humid, like breathing in a greenhouse. And that smell was back, that mixture of chemicals and old flowers. Formaldehyde and funeral lilies. I walked toward the elevator, keeping my footsteps quiet. Halfway there, I passed a patient room. The door was ajar. Inside, I could see an empty bed, covers pulled back, but the pillow had a deep indentation in it. Fresh, as if someone had just gotten up. But this was the 3rd floor. According to the hospital directory, I'd memorized my first day. The 3rd floor had been closed for renovation 6 months ago. The lights flickered again. 3 flashes, darkness, 3 flashes. In the moment of darkness, I saw something in my peripheral vision. A figure standing in one of the doorways. When the lights came back, the doorway was empty. I reached the elevator and jabbed the up button. The display above the doors showed the car was on the basement level. My stomach dropped. The display changed. 1, 2. It was coming up. Fast. Too fast. The doors opened with a cheerful ding that seemed obscene in the oppressive silence. The elevator car was empty, but the overhead light was out. Only the small emergency light in the corner provided illumination, a sickly yellow glow that made everything look jaundiced and wrong. I stepped inside and pressed 4. The doors slid closed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the elevator lurched upward, but something was wrong with the motion. It felt like we were moving sideways or rotating, or I couldn't describe it. My inner ear screamed that the laws of physics were being violated. The emergency light flickered. In the moments of darkness, I saw handprints on the walls, dozens of them, smeared in something dark. When the light came back, the walls were clean. The elevator stopped. The display showed 3.5. That wasn't a floor. There was no such thing as floor 3.5. The doors opened. I was looking at a hallway that couldn't exist. It stretched impossibly long, curving upward in the distance like looking at the world through a fisheye lens. The doors were all identical, numbered in a sequence that made no sense. 307, 512, 104, 892. And standing in the middle of the hallway, facing away from me, was a figure in a hospital gown. Its head was tilted at an angle that was just slightly wrong. Not broken neck wrong, but uncanny valley wrong. Like someone who had forgotten how humans hold their heads. 4th floor, I whispered, jamming the button again. The figure's head rotated 180 degrees while its body stayed perfectly still. Its face was a gray blank, features smooth and unformed like a mannequin's. But its eyes were fully formed, and they were looking at me with an expression of profound hunger. The elevator doors began to close. The figure took a step forward, then another. Each step covered an impossible distance, eating up the hallway between us. The doors sealed shut just as something slammed into them from outside, hard enough to dent the metal inward. The elevator shot upward. This time the sensation was even worse, like falling and rising simultaneously, like being turned inside out. I gripped the handrail, fighting the urge to vomit. The display flickered through numbers: 4, 7, 12, -2, 4. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. 4th floor. Normal. The lights were steady, and I could hear the familiar sounds of a functioning hospital. Distant beeps, hushed voices, the pneumatic whoosh of automatic doors. I practically fell out of the elevator, gasping. A nurse at the station looked up, startled. "Are you all right?" she asked. I opened my mouth to respond, then remembered Rule 3. Instead, I held up the laminated card and pointed to Rule 8. Do not discuss what you experience with day shift staff. But this wasn't day shift. It was 1:47 a.m. The nurse's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Maintenance?" she asked. I nodded. "Closet 4B is that way," she said, pointing down a hallway to my left. "He's been waiting for you." Closet 4B was larger than the one on the 3rd floor, more of a storage room than a closet. Inside, surrounded by shelves of medical supplies and cleaning equipment, sat a man in his early 30s. He was thin, almost gaunt, with a kind of hollow-eyed look that came from too many nights without sleep. "Close the door," he said, "and check your watch. How long did the elevator ride feel?" "Maybe 30 seconds. Check your watch," he repeated. I looked down. 2:19 a.m. "That's impossible," I breathed. It was 1:47 when I got out of the elevator. Time doesn't work right here. Not after midnight, and especially not in the elevator. He pulled out his own laminated card, identical to mine, but more worn, the edges frayed. "My name is David. I was the night maintenance guy before you. That was 4 months ago." 4 months? But Gerald said. Gerald lied. They always do. Because if they told you the truth about this place, nobody would take the job. David stood and began pacing. "How much do you know? What did you see?" I told him everything. The drawer, the thing that had climbed out, the thing on the stairs, the impossible floor between 3 and 4. He listened with the expression of someone hearing a story they already knew by heart. When I finished, he held up his card and pointed to Rule 6, the smudged one. "Can you read it?" he asked. "No. It's completely illegible." "That's because it's not meant to be read. It's meant to be discovered." He pulled a small UV flashlight from his pocket and shined it on the card. New text appeared, glowing faintly purple. Rule 6. This hospital was built on the site of a Victorian-era morgue that burned down in 1887. 47 bodies were never recovered. They are still here. If you acknowledge their presence, they will acknowledge yours. My mouth went dry. The drawer? When I saw the hand, you acknowledged it. You saw it, and now it sees you. David's voice was grim. That's why Rule 4 exists. The first 2 times, you're supposed to close it and walk away. Treat it like a mechanical malfunction. But the 3rd time, he trailed off. The 3rd time means one of them is testing the boundaries, seeing if you're paying attention. If you close it that 3rd time, if you keep treating them like they're not real, You might survive the night. Might. This place, it's not just a hospital. It exists in layers. The normal hospital, the one patients and day staff see, that's the surface. But underneath, overlapping it like a double exposure, is the old morgue, the burned morgue. And at night, especially between midnight and 3 a.m., the barriers between those layers gets thin. Why those hours? Because that's when the fire started. February 7th, 1887, at midnight. It burned until 3 a.m. The anniversary is next week, February 7th. That's when the barriers disappear completely. I felt my blood run cold. What happens then? The last maintenance worker before me? He was here on February 7th. They found his body in the basement. Official cause of death, heart attack. But I saw the security footage before they deleted it. He didn't die of a heart attack. He died of whatever came out of those drawers. The sound made us both freeze. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, wet, accompanied by that dragging sound. David killed the lights in the closet. In the darkness, I could see light from the hallway through the crack under the door. A shadow passed by, blocking the light. The footsteps stopped right outside the closet. The door handle rattled. David grabbed my arm, his grip painful. He leaned close and whispered directly into my ear. I can't come in. The closets are protected. But we can't stay here forever. At 3 a.m., the elevator stops working. We'll be trapped on this floor until 11 p.m. tomorrow night. Tomorrow night? But I'm supposed to leave at 6 a.m. Read Rule 8 again. Really read it. I pulled out my card and squinted at it in the darkness. If you survive until 6 a.m., you may leave. I survived last night, David whispered. And the night before that. And the night before that. But every night at 11 p.m., I'm back here. I can't leave. I haven't seen daylight in 4 months. That's insane. You could just walk out. Could I? He held up his phone, showing me the date, February 3rd, 2024. I checked my own phone. February 3rd, 2024. What was the date when you started? He asked. I thought back. January 30th. And today is February 3rd. You've been working 5 nights. Right. Yes. I've been working 127 nights. But the date never changes. Time doesn't move forward here. It's looping, cycling, waiting for February 7th. The footsteps resumed, moving away down the hall. We waited another 5 minutes before David turned the lights back on. We have until 3 a.m. to figure out what Rule 6 really means, he said. Because that's the rule they don't want us to understand. That's the rule that explains how to break the cycle. I checked my watch, 2:34 a.m. 26 minutes to understand 4 months of horror. Show me everything, I said. All your notes. Everything you've learned. David pulled a battered notebook from behind a stack of surgical masks. The pages were covered in cramped handwriting, diagrams, timestamps, and observations. He flipped to a page near the middle. The entities, I call them the unclaimed, follow patterns. They're stronger on certain nights. The closer we get to February 7th, the more active they become. He pointed to a chart tracking incidents by date. January 30th, when you started, that's day 5 in the cycle. Today is day 9. February 7th is day 13. 13 days. Is that significant? Maybe. But look at this. He turned to another page showing a floor plan of the hospital. Certain areas were marked with red X's. These are the dead zones, places where the old morgue and the current hospital overlap most completely. The basement morgue is the epicenter. But there are others, the elevator shaft, parts of the 3rd floor, and one room on the 5th floor. Room 547. What's in room 547? That's where they kept the morgue records. The original logbook listing every body that was in the building when it burned. I found a reference to it in the hospital archives, but I haven't been able to get there. Why not? Because to reach the 5th floor after the elevator stops working, you have to take the stairs. And the stairs. He shuddered. You've met what lives in the stairs. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, the nurse is coming. She's not who she appears to be. Hide. I showed David the message. His face went pale. Who keeps texting you? He whispered. I thought it was you. It's not me. Footsteps approached in the hallway, the nurse from the station. Through the crack in the door, I could see her paws outside our closet. "I know you're in there," she said, her voice pleasant. "Maintenance workers always hide in the closets. It's in your nature." She leaned closer to the door. "But you should know, the closets aren't as safe as you think. The consecration only works on the unclaimed. Not on us." "Us?" I breathed. "The staff who work night shift aren't really staff," David whispered. "They're echoes. Impressions left behind by people who died here. They're not hostile, but they're not exactly helpful either. They're just performing their roles over and over." The nurse's footsteps moved away, but her voice drifted back. "You have 19 minutes until the elevator stops." I'd use them wisely. I checked my watch, 2:41 a.m. "We need to make a decision," I said. "We can either stay here until morning, or we can try for room 547 now, while the elevator still works." David was already shaking his head. "You don't understand. Rule 7, the elevator only operates between midnight and 3 a.m. It doesn't say which floors it will take you to. After 2:30 a.m., it starts showing you other places. Other times, you might push 5 and end up on floor 3.5 again. Or somewhere worse. Then we take the stairs. I told you, the thing in the stairs is probably weaker than whatever happens on February 7th. I grabbed his arm. "David, you've been trapped here for 4 months. Don't you want to break the cycle?" He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but we go armed." He reached behind a shelf and pulled out a mop handle that had been sharpened to a point. "Iron. It's supposed to work against supernatural entities, right? That's cold iron. This is aluminum. It's what we've got." We opened the closet door carefully. The hallway was empty, but I could hear sounds from the patient rooms, groans, whispers, the creak of bed frames, things that should have been silent at this hour. The stairwell was 20 feet away. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to open that door. On 3, David whispered. 1, 2. The lights went out. Complete darkness. Absolute. Even the emergency lights were dead. Then, in the darkness, I heard them, dozens of drawers sliding open. Not from the basement. From every floor. Every more drawer in the building, opening simultaneously. Rule 5, I gasped. Never shine your light into an open drawer. "David, don't turn on your light." Too late. His flashlight clicked on, and I heard his sharp intake of breath. The hallway was lined with more drawers. They'd appeared in the darkness, replacing the patient rooms, and every single one was open. Every single one had something inside, sitting up, turning to face us. My phone buzzed. "Run." We ran for the stairwell. Behind us, things were climbing out of drawers, their movements accompanied by wet sounds and the scrape of metal on metal. I hit the stairwell door first, yanking it open. David was right behind me. We slammed the door shut just as something crashed into it from the other side. The stairs stretched above and below us. Up to the 5th floor. Down to the basement. Up, I decided. Room 547. We need answers. We started climbing. Somewhere below us, the basement door opened, and something began to climb after us. The thing in the stairs wasn't climbing the steps. It was moving through the space itself, sometimes on the walls, sometimes on the ceiling. I could hear it, always just one flight behind us keeping pace. When I made the mistake of looking back, I saw movement that hurt to perceive, angles that didn't make sense, limbs that bent in too many places. We reached the 5th floor landing. I grabbed the door handle. It was locked. No, David muttered, checking his ring of keys. "I have access to every floor." This doesn't. The thing below us had reached the 4th floor landing. I could hear it breathing, that same wet, backwards drowning sound from the morgue. My phone buzzed, badge reader. Right side of door. I saw it, a small gray panel I'd missed in the panic. I pressed my ID badge against it. The light blinked red. Denied. "Use his," David said, pointing at my badge. "Use Gerald's." "I don't have Gerald's badge, I have mine." "Exactly. Think about it. Gerald's been here forever. Why would he give you this job? Why would he be so desperate to get someone else down in that basement?" The thing was on our landing now, just around the corner of the stairwell. The temperature had plummeted. Ice was forming on the railings. I pulled out the badge Gerald had given me that first night, the one he'd said was mine. But now I noticed something I'd missed before. The photo on the badge wasn't me. It was similar, but wrong. Like someone had described me from memory. I pressed it to the reader. The light blinked green. The door unlocked with a heavy clunk, and we threw ourselves through, slamming it behind us. Something hit the door hard enough to crack it, but the lock held. The 5th floor was dark. Completely dark. Even our flashlights seemed dimmed, their beams barely penetrating a few feet ahead. 547 should be that way, David whispered, pointing left. We moved down the hallway, our lights sweeping over doors with numbers that descended toward 547. The silence was oppressive. Even the thing in the stairwell had gone quiet. Room 547's door was different from the others. It was older, solid wood instead of the modern materials used elsewhere in the hospital. And carved into the wood, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it, were symbols. Protective symbols. This was their office, David breathed. The morgue administrators. They knew what they were dealing with. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was frozen in time, literally. Everything was covered in a thick layer of frost. Desks, filing cabinets, even the papers scattered across the surfaces were preserved under ice. And on the main desk, open to a specific page, was a leather-bound ledger. I approached it carefully, my breath misting in the freezing air. The page was dated February 7th, 1887. It listed names, body numbers, and causes of death. But at the bottom of the page, written in different handwriting, shaky, desperate, with a note, "They're not dead. The fire didn't kill them, it trapped them. Between death and life, between then and now." The building was supposed to be demolished, but they found a way to stop it. They convinced the city to build here instead, to create a place where the living and dead exist in the same space. On the anniversary, the separation fails completely. They'll be free to cross over. Unless, the note ended abruptly, the pen having torn through the paper. Unless what? I demanded. Unless what? David was examining the filing cabinets, pulling out frost-covered folders. These are intake records. Everybody that was brought to the morgue between 1885 and 1887. Look, there's a pattern. Starting in 1886, they began receiving bodies from a specific address, 1247 Harker Street. Is that significant? That's where the hospital administration building is now. It was an asylum before. A private institution for the mentally ill and criminally insane. He pulled out another folder. They were using the asylum to, God, they were experimenting on patients, trying to prevent death, to trap souls in dying bodies. Why? Because someone paid them to. Look at the payment records, thousands of dollars coming from one source. He showed me a ledger entry. R. Harker, the asylum owner. He was dying of tuberculosis, and he was trying to find a way to cheat death. My blood ran cold. Did it work? He died on February 6, 1887. His body was brought to the morgue that night, and at midnight the fire started. David looked up at me. What if it wasn't an accident? What if he did something? Some kind of ritual using all those test subjects he'd experimented on. The room's temperature dropped even further. Our breath was coming out in thick clouds now. The note said they convinced the city to build here. I said, they who? The 47 unclaimed bodies. Not just unclaimed. Unclaimed because they were never really dead to begin with. David's voice was shaking. They've been trapped here for 137 years, getting stronger with every person who works in this building. Every death that happens here adds to their power. And on February 7th, the door behind us slammed shut. The lights went out, and in the darkness, 47 voices spoke as one. We will be whole. My phone's screen provided the only light. Another message, Rule 6 isn't a warning. It's an instruction. You must acknowledge them to free them. But you must acknowledge what they really are. What they really are. I whispered into the darkness. What are you? The temperature began to rise. Not slowly, rapidly. Within seconds, the room went from freezing to warm. Then hot. The frost on the papers began to steam. The fire, David breathed. It's happening again. Smoke began seeping under the door. Real smoke. I could smell it, burning wood, burning flesh, burning chemicals. We're not in the present anymore, I said, understanding flooding through me. We're in 1887. We're in the fire. The voices spoke again, still in unison, but this time I could hear the pain in them. He bound us. 46 test subjects and 1 mad doctor. When we died, we couldn't leave. When we burned, we couldn't die. We've been burning for 137 years. Acknowledge us. See us. Know us. Free us. The ledger on the desk was no longer covered in frost. The pages began to flip on their own, stopping at a page near the back. A list of names. 46 names. And at the top of the list, in bold letters, ritual participants consented to eternal service. They volunteered, I whispered in horror. They believed him. He promised them immortality, and they let him. They didn't know what it would mean, David finished. They didn't know it would be eternal suffering. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and took a photo of every page, every name. The smoke was getting thicker. The heat was becoming unbearable. What do we do? David asked. How do we free them? My phone buzzed one more time. Speak their names. All 47. Before the anniversary. Or they'll take everyone in the building with them into the fire. I checked my watch through the smoke, 2:58 a.m. 2 minutes until the elevators stopped working. We have to get out of here, I said. We have to get to the basement. The morgue. That's where the ritual happened. That's where we can break it. We ran for the door, but it was already too hot to touch. The wood was beginning to char. Through the smoke, I could see flames licking at the edges. The window. It was the only way out. 5th floor, David said. We'll die if we jump. We'll die if we stay. I grabbed a chair and smashed it through the window. Cold air rushed in, and I looked down at the drop. Except it wasn't a 5-story drop. We were looking at ground level. The fire escape, the 1887 fire escape, was right there, just a step away. The layers are completely merged, I breathed. The old morgue and the hospital. They're the same building right now. We climbed out onto the fire escape. Below us, I could see the old morgue as it had been, a Victorian-era building, flames consuming it from the inside. And through the windows, I could see shapes. 47 figures, some trying to escape, others standing perfectly still, burning. We had 4 days until February 7th. 4 days to learn and speak 47 names. 4 days to break a 137-year-old curse. Or everyone in Mercy General Hospital would share their fate. We climbed down the fire escape in a world that shouldn't exist. 1887 and 2024 overlapping like 2 photographs held up to the same light. Through the windows of the burning morgue, I could see the 47 trapped souls. But when I blinked, the building transformed back into the modern hospital, and the shapes became patient rooms and empty corridors. The elevator, David gasped, checking his watch. We have 90 seconds. We hit the ground and ran. The front entrance of the hospital shimmered between 2 states, ornate Victorian doors with brass fixtures and modern automatic glass doors. I pushed through, not knowing which version was real. The elevator was just ahead. The display showed 2:59 a.m. 60 seconds. Something was wrong with my phone. The screen was glitching, flashing between my text messages and what looked like old photographs, daguerreotypes of stern-faced doctors and patients with haunted eyes. The last message was still visible. Speak their names. We reached the elevator. I jabbed the button. The doors opened immediately. Inside, standing in the center of the car, was a figure in Victorian-era clothing. A man with a gaunt face and eyes that burned with an unhealthy light. Around his neck was a brass nameplate, Dr. Roderick Harker, Director of Psychiatric Medicine. You found my work, he said, his voice like paper tearing. My beautiful work. David grabbed my arm. Don't get in. Whatever you do, don't. But the elevator doors were already closing, and we were inside with him. The display above the doors began cycling through numbers. B1, 2, -1, 17, infinity. B. Time is circular here, Harker said, spreading his hands. I made it so. Death should have been linear. You live, you die, you're gone. But I found a way to bend it. To create a loop. Do you know how? Neither of us answered. The elevator was moving in directions that didn't exist. 46 subjects, he continued. Each one a test, each one a failure. But failure is just data. And with enough data, one can solve any problem. Even mortality. He smiled, revealing teeth that were too long. I died before I could complete the great work. But I took them with me, bound them to me. And when the fire came, it didn't destroy us. It locked us in place. Forever dying, forever burning, forever learning. That's insane, I said. You're torturing them. You're torturing yourself. Am I? He tilted his head at an unnatural angle. I've had 137 years to study death from the inside. Do you know what I've discovered? Death isn't an ending. It's a door. And I've learned how to hold that door open. He leaned closer. Every person who dies in this hospital passes through me first. Every soul. Every consciousness. They all leave something behind. Memories. Fear. Pain. It feeds us. Makes us stronger. The elevator stopped. The display showed me. The doors opened onto the basement morgue. But it was different now. The modern stainless steel drawers were gone, replaced by Victorian-era wooden examination tables. And on every table was a body covered with a white sheet. 46 sheets. 46 bodies. You want to speak their names? Harker asked. To free them? You'd have to free me too. We're bound together. My will sustains them. Without me, they wouldn't be trapped. But without them, I can't hold the door open. Then we all go free, David said. All of you. Back through that door. To whatever comes next. Harker's smile faded. I've spent 137 years avoiding what comes next. I've seen it, waiting on the other side. Judgment. Punishment. Eternal silence. I won't go back to that. You don't have a choice, I said, pulling out my phone. I have the names. All 46 of them. And yours makes 47. You need to speak them in this room, Harker said. In the place where the ritual was performed. During the hours when the layers are thinnest, midnight to 3 a.m. And you need something else. He pointed to one of the tables. You need this. I approached the table and pulled back the sheet. Underneath was a leather-bound book, identical to the ledger we'd found in room 547, but this one was scorched and water-damaged. The pages were covered in elaborate symbols and handwritten notes in Latin. On the final page, written in English, was a ritual to sever the binding. Speak each name aloud in the place of death. Acknowledge their suffering. Give them permission to pass. The binding will break when the last name is spoken. Warning, the one who performs this ritual will serve as anchor. They will hold the door open. They will feel every death they are freeing. And they must remain conscious and speaking until the final name is uttered, or the binding will reassert itself stronger than before. The previous maintenance worker, David said quietly. The one who died here on February 7th. He tried this, didn't he? Harker nodded. He spoke 32 names before his heart gave out. The pain was overwhelming. 46 deaths, experienced simultaneously. His consciousness shattered like glass. I checked my watch, 3:02 a.m. The elevator had stopped working. We were trapped in the basement with a dead doctor and 46 corpses until 11 p.m. Why are you telling us this? I asked Harker. Why give us the ritual if you don't want to be freed? Because I'm not the only consciousness in this binding, he said, and for the first time his voice sounded almost human, almost regretful. They're in here with me. All 46. Screaming, burning, begging. I can hear them every second of every day. They hate me. They want me to suffer. And the only way they can make me suffer is to be freed, because that means I'll face what's waiting for me on the other side. So you're trapped by your own creation, David said. You can't let them go. But you can't stop them from trying to escape. On February 7th, the binding weakens enough that they can influence the physical world. If they can find someone strong enough to perform the ritual, they'll finally be free. And I'll finally face my punishment. Harker looked at me. They've chosen you. You have the names. You have the ritual. And you have 4 days to decide if you're strong enough. The overhead lights flickered. When they stabilized, Harker was gone. But the 46 bodies remained, and I could hear them now, soft voices, whispering in unison. Help us. Free us. Please. David was staring at the ritual instructions. Even if we try this, there's no guarantee we'll survive. The last guy's heart gave out at name 32. You'd have to make it through all 46 plus Harker. 47 deaths experienced simultaneously. What happens if we don't try? I asked. What happens on February 7th if they're not freed? According to my research, the binding fails completely. They'll be able to manifest fully in the physical world. And they'll be angry. 137 years of rage and pain, unleashed on everyone in the building. My phone screen lit up with another message from the unknown number. I was the maintenance worker before David. I'm still here, trapped between. I made it to name 32. You can make it further. You have to. The hospital will be full on February 7th. It always is. Scheduled surgeries, full ER. 200 plus people in the building. They'll all die if the binding fails. I looked at the 46 cover bodies. Then I looked at David. We practice, I said. We have 4 nights. We learn the names. We practice the ritual. And on February 7th, we break this curse. You'll die, David said flatly. Maybe, but I'll die trying to save 200 people. That's better than dying because I was too scared to try. From somewhere in the darkness of the morgue, I heard applause. Slow. Mocking. Harker's voice echoed, brave words. Let's see if you still feel that way when you're burning. I checked my watch again, 3:15 a.m. 2 hours and 45 minutes until 6 a.m. 3 days and 21 hours until February 7th. We had work to do. We couldn't leave the basement until 6 a.m. David had been right about that. We tried the stairs, but something invisible pushed us back like walking into a wall of solid air. The elevator was dormant, its display dark. We were sealed in with the 46 bodies and the ghost of a mad doctor. So we used the time to prepare. I photographed every page of the scorched ritual book, making sure I had backup copies on my phone. David found a storage room with supplies, water bottles, protein bars that maintenance workers had stashed for long shifts. We rationed them carefully. 4 nights until February 7th meant we needed to conserve everything. The names from the ledger were a mix of common and unusual. Sarah Mitchell, 19, died of influenza. Thomas O'Brien, 34, died of consumption. Margaret Van Dorn, 27, cause of death, complications from Dr. Harker's experimental treatment. That phrase appeared 46 times. Every single patient had died from Harker's treatment. They volunteered, David said, reading over my shoulder. The intake forms are all here. They signed consent papers. But they didn't know what they were consenting to. What was he actually doing to them? David pulled out a folder of medical notes. The handwriting was Harker's, elegant but increasingly manic as the dates progressed. He was trying to separate the soul from the body at the moment of death, then reintegrate them. Keep the consciousness alive while the body died and was revived. He called it death training. He believed that if you could die and come back enough times, you'd eventually master the process. Become immune to death. That's insane. That's what the other doctors said. He was kicked out of 3 medical schools before he bought the asylum and started working in secret. David flipped through more pages. The fire on February 7th wasn't an accident. Look, he planned it. He brought all 46 of his successful subjects to the morgue that night. He performed one final ritual, binding their souls to his, and then he set the building on fire. He believed the trauma of burning alive would complete the transformation. Instead, it trapped them all in a permanent state of dying. Exactly. I studied the list of names, trying to memorize them. Sarah Mitchell, Thomas O'Brien, Margaret Van Dorn, Catherine Wells, James Patterson. At 4:30 a.m., something changed. The bodies under the sheets began to move. Not violent movement, just small shifts. A hand twitching, a chest rising as if taking a breath, a head turning slightly toward us. They know we're trying to help them, David whispered. They're showing us they're still here. Still conscious. One of the sheets pulled back on its own, revealing the body underneath. A young woman, maybe 25, with dark hair and vacant eyes. Her lips moved, and a voice that seemed to come from very far away said, Sarah Mitchell. I was 19. I wanted to live forever. Instead, I've been dying forever. More sheets pulled back. More voices spoke, overlapping. Thomas O'Brien, 34. Margaret Van Dorn, 27. Catherine Wells, 41. 46 voices, speaking 46 names. Each one a person. Each one trapped. "We're going to free you," I said. "I promise." The voice of Sarah Mitchell spoke again. "The pain is worse than you can imagine. When you speak our names, you'll feel what we feel. Every moment of the past 137 years, compressed into seconds. The burning, the suffocating, the endless dying. The last man who tried, his mind broke before his heart did. Are you prepared for that?" I wasn't. How could anyone be prepared for that? But I said, I have to be. What happens if I fail? The binding reasserts itself, stronger than before. We'll be trapped for another 137 years. And everyone in the hospital on that night will be pulled into the fire with us. Dr. Harker will have 47 new subjects, then 47 more, and more, until the binding becomes permanent. So I can't fail. No, Sarah Mitchell said. You can't. At 6 a.m. exactly, the elevator chimed to life. The display showed B1. We can leave now, David said. We should. Get rest. Come back tonight and practice speaking the names. But I didn't want to leave. Something about the daylight waiting above felt dangerous. Like if I went up into the normal world, I'd lose my nerve. I convinced myself this was all a nightmare and I could just walk away. I'm staying, I said. You can't. Rule 8, you're supposed to leave at 6 a.m. If you stay past that, I'm already trapped, David. You said it yourself. Time is looping. The only way out is through. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Then we practice. All day. Until we have the ritual memorized. We spent the next 16 hours in that basement. The bodies stayed visible, no longer covered by sheets. They watched us with those vacant eyes as we practiced speaking their names, learning the rhythm of the ritual, preparing for what had to come. At 11 p.m., when the night shift officially started, Gerald called my phone. You're still in the building, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, you shouldn't be. You should have left at 6 a.m. Now you're locked in until tomorrow morning. I know. Do you? His voice dropped. Do you know what you've done? By staying past your shift, you've agreed. You've accepted the role. You're not just maintenance anymore. You're the anchor. What does that mean? It means on February 7th, whether you perform the ritual or not, you're bound to this building now. The curse recognized you. You'll either free them all, or you'll join them. There's no third option. The line went dead. I looked at David. His face had gone pale. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have told you. I should have warned you. But I was so desperate for help, I didn't think. It's fine, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. It's actually better this way. Now I know there's no backing out. No hesitation. I have to succeed. From the darkness at the far end of the morgue, Dr. Harker's voice drifted out. 3 days until February 7th. 3 days until you burn with us. I hope you're a quick study. I picked up the ritual book and opened it to the first page. Let's practice, I said. We had 72 hours to prepare for 47 deaths. The clock was ticking. 3 days passed like 3 minutes. We'd practiced the ritual hundreds of times. I could recite all 46 names in order without looking at the book. David had found historical records for each victim, learning their stories, their faces, their final moments. The more we learn about them, the more the ritual felt less like a magical incantation and more like a memorial service. Which, in a way, it was. February 7th arrived with unusual weather, thick fog that rolled in off the water and settled over the hospital like a burial shroud. By evening, visibility was less than 20 feet. The day shift workers left early, spooked by the atmosphere. By 10 p.m., the hospital was operating on a skeleton crew. But the patient load was heavy. Gerald had been right about that. Scheduled surgeries, a full ER, obstetrics patients, and labor. I counted at least 200 people in the building, not including staff. 200 people who would die if I failed. David and I stood in the basement morgue at 11:45 p.m. The 46 bodies were visible now, sitting up on their examination tables, waiting. Dr. Harker stood in the corner, his form flickering between solid and translucent. "You're really going to do this," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, you'll fail. Just like the others. 32 names. That's the record. Your consciousness will fragment. Your heart will stop. And I'll bind you like I bound them. 47 trapped souls becomes 48. Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'll succeed. Either way, we're ending this tonight." I opened the ritual book to the first page. The instructions were simple but terrifying. Stand in the center of the room. Speak each name clearly. After each name, say, "I acknowledge your suffering. I give you permission to pass. Do not stop speaking, no matter what you feel. Do not break the circle of names. When the last name is spoken, the binding will break." The catch was in that third instruction, no matter what you feel. Because I would feel everything. Every death. Every moment of suffering over 137 years. 46 people burning alive, drowning, suffocating, being torn apart by Dr. Harker's experiments. All at once. All in me. I checked my watch, 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until midnight. 2 minutes until the anniversary of the fire. If I pass out, I told David, keep reading the names. Don't let me stop. I can't perform the ritual. It has to be you. You're the anchor now. Then make sure I stay conscious. Whatever it takes. He nodded grimly, pulling out a bottle of ammonia from the medical supplies. This will wake you up if you fade. It won't be pleasant. None of this is pleasant. 11:59 p.m. The temperature in the basement had been dropping all day. Now it plummeted. Our breath came out in thick clouds. Ice formed on the metal surfaces. The lights began to flicker. The 46 bodies stood up from their tables. Dr. Harker's form solidified, becoming more real than I'd ever seen him. It's time, he said. The anniversary is here. The fire is starting again. And it was. I could smell smoke. Not the imagined smoke of a memory, but real smoke. The sprinkler system should have activated, but the pipes had frozen solid. Somewhere above us, on every floor, I heard alarms begin to wail. Midnight. I stepped into the center of the room, holding the ritual book. My hands were shaking so badly the pages rattled. Sarah Mitchell, I said, my voice cracking. I acknowledge your suffering. I give you permission to pass. The moment I finished the words, it hit me. Sarah's death. 19 years old, subjected to one of Dr. Harker's experiments. Consciousness ripped from her body, forced to watch her own heart stop, then shocked back to life. Again, and again, and again. 37 times before her body finally gave out. Then the burning. Oh God, the burning. I screamed. Couldn't help it. The pain was beyond anything I'd imagined. Keep going, David shouted. Don't stop. Thomas O'Brien, I gasped. I acknowledge your suffering. I give you permission to pass. Thomas's death layered onto Sarah's. Consumption had been slowly killing him, each breath torture, until Harker had accelerated the process, trying to capture the exact moment the soul separated from the dying body. The suffocation. The burning. Both at once now. Two people's final agonies compressed into my consciousness. I fell to my knees. David was beside me immediately, holding the ammonia under my nose. The sharp smell cut through the pain fog. 9 more names and you'll beat the record, he said. You can do this. Margaret Van Dorn, I forced out. I acknowledge your suffering. I give you permission to pass. 3 deaths now. The pain was exponential, not additive. It wasn't 3 times worse, it was 3 to the power of 3. I could feel my heart straining, beating too fast, then too slow, trying to process sensations it was never meant to handle. I kept going. Name after name. Death after death. And name 20, my vision started to blur. The basement was on fire now, real fire, not memory. The sprinklers were frozen. The smoke was getting thick. At name 30, I tasted blood. My nose was bleeding. Maybe my ears too. At name 32, the record, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my ribs. Something deeper. My consciousness fragmenting, just like Harker had said it would. But then I felt hands on my shoulders. 46 hands. The trapped souls, lending me to their strength. "We're with you," Sarah Mitchell's voice said. "You're carrying us. Let us carry you too." Somehow I kept going. Name 35, 38, 40. The pain was infinite. I existed in 40 different dying moments simultaneously. But I also existed in this moment, in this burning basement, speaking these names. Name 44, 45, 46. The 46 souls around me began to glow. Faint at first, then brighter. They were becoming transparent, their forms lifting away from their bodies. One name left. Dr. Roderick Harker, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Blood was running freely from my nose and ears now. My vision was graying out. "I acknowledge your suffering. I give you permission to pass." Harker's form flickered. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked afraid. "No," he said. "No, I won't. I can't. What's waiting for me?" "You don't have a choice anymore," I said. "The binding is broken. You all have to go." His death hit me last and hit me hardest. Not because it was the worst death, it wasn't. But because layered underneath, it was something else. Guilt. Profound, crushing guilt. In his final moments, Dr. Roderick Harker had realized what he'd done. He'd trapped 46 innocent people in eternal suffering. And the knowledge of that was worse than any physical pain. I felt my heart stop. Everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital bed. Not the morgue. Not the basement. A regular patient room on the 3rd floor of Mercy General, with morning sunlight streaming through the window. David was slumped in a chair beside the bed, asleep. When he heard me stir, his eyes snapped open. "You're alive," he breathed. "I wasn't sure. Your heart stopped for almost 3 minutes. The ER team brought you back. The ritual croaked. It worked. The binding broke." At 12:47 a.m., every alarm in the hospital stopped. The fires went out instantly. The temperature returned to normal. He handed me a glass of water. And something else happened. I can see daylight. For the first time in 4 months, I can see the sun. The time loop. Broken. We're free. All of us. He paused. "Well, almost all of us." "What do you mean?" He handed me his phone, showing me a news article from that morning. Mercy General Hospital closes basement level indefinitely. Following a series of unexplained equipment malfunctions and structural concerns, hospital administration has permanently sealed the basement morgue. The decision comes after maintenance workers reported significant damage to the facility during the night of February 7th. No injuries were reported, though one maintenance worker was hospitalized with cardiac arrest and made a full recovery. I read between the lines. They couldn't explain what happened, so they sealed it away. Standard procedure. "There's something else you should know," David said quietly. He pulled out a piece of paper, a printout from the hospital's historical archives. "I found this while you were unconscious. The previous maintenance worker, the one who tried the ritual before you. What about him?" "His name was Gerald Morrison. He started as night maintenance in 1987. The anniversary tried to take him that February 7th. He attempted the ritual, made it to name 32, and failed. But instead of dying, he made a deal." "What kind of deal?" "He'd find replacements. People to attempt the ritual in his place. Every year, he'd hire a new night maintenance worker. Most quit after one night. Some lasted longer. 1 or 2 even attempted the ritual, but failed before name 20. And with every failure, the binding got stronger, and his debt got deeper. So he's still trapped. In a way. He can't leave. He's bound to the building, forced to be the perpetual supervisor. Finding people. Watching them try. Watching them fail or die." David met my eyes. "You broke the cycle. But I don't know if that freed him or condemned him to something worse." I thought about Gerald's face when he'd handed me the laminated card. The resignation in his eyes. The relief. "He knew," I said. "He knew what I was walking into. But he also knew someone had to break it eventually. Congratulations. You survived." David stood and pulled back the curtain, letting in more sunlight. "The hospital board is calling it a gas leak and electrical problems. They've compensated the patients who were here that night. Everyone's been reassigned to other facilities temporarily. And they've decided to renovate the basement, completely seal off the old morgue section. Will that work? I don't know. Maybe. The binding is broken. The 46 souls have passed on. But that room, that place where Dr. Harker performed his experiments for all those years, I think some echoes will always remain. My doctor came in then, a normal doctor, during normal visiting hours with normal medical concerns. She told me I'd suffered cardiac arrest but made a remarkable recovery. She wanted to keep me for observation for another day. Then I'd be free to go. Free to go. I'd survived until 6 a.m. Actually, I'd survived until 12:47 a.m., but close enough. 2 days later, I was discharged. I found David waiting for me in the lobby. "So what now?" he asked. "Are you going back to the diner? Back to your normal life?" I thought about it. About coffee and debt collectors and student loans. About my mother's medical bills and the desperate scramble that had led me to take a job as night maintenance at a hospital I should have known better than to trust. "No," I said. "I think I'm going to do something else." "Like what?" "There are other hospitals. Other buildings with dark histories. Other places where people get trapped between life and death, suffering in silence because no one knows how to help them." I pulled out my phone, opening a document where I'd written down everything I'd learned. The ritual, the rules, the warning signs. Someone needs to help them. Someone who understands what's happening and isn't afraid to face it. David smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from him. "You're going to hunt ghosts? I'm going to free them." I looked back at Mercy General, at the building that had tried to kill me, and instead had shown me something important. Everyone deserves to pass on. Everyone deserves peace. Even the ones who've been suffering for 137 years. We walked out into the February sunshine. Behind us, the hospital stood quiet. But as we reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. St. Anthony's Medical Center, Portland. Night shift janitor keeps hearing children laughing in the closed pediatric ward. No children have been treated there in 12 years. Interested, I showed David the message. "Already?" he asked. Apparently, word travels fast. I typed back, "Send me the address." The response was immediate. "Good luck. Remember, speak their names. Acknowledge their suffering. Give them permission to pass. And whatever you do, never forget Rule 6. Rule 6. The smudged rule that wasn't actually smudged, just hidden. The rule that had saved my life. This hospital was built on the site of a Victorian-era morgue that burned down in 1887. 47 bodies were never recovered. They are still here. If you acknowledge their presence, they will acknowledge yours. Acknowledging them, truly seeing them, speaking their names, recognizing their suffering, have been the key all along. Not to trap them, but to free them. I looked up at Mercy General one last time. In a third-floor window, I thought I saw a figure. Gerald Morrison, watching, waiting, still trapped. "We'll come back for him," I told David. "Once we understand more. Once we know how to break his binding too. And if we can't, then we'll keep trying. Because that's what you do. You don't leave people behind to suffer. Not if you can help it." We got in the car and drove toward Portland. Behind us, in the basement of Mercy General Hospital, drawer 7C sat closed and locked. But sometimes, late at night when the building was quiet, maintenance workers reported hearing something from behind that sealed door. Not screaming, not crying, singing. 46 voices, finally at peace, singing together in harmony. And one voice, the 47th, Dr. Harker's voice, singing with them. Singing of guilt, of redemption, of punishment finally accepted. The morgue drawer would never open by itself again. But in hospitals across the country, in old buildings with dark histories, other drawers were opening. Other voices were calling out. And now someone was finally listening. Then, if you experienced this story, leave a comment telling us which rule unsettled you most. And remember, if you work night shift anywhere, and you're given a list of rules that seem strange, maybe there's a reason for them. Stay safe out there.